Let me ask you a question. Do you realize that not every song sung in church makes heaven rejoice? Some songs actually make the devil smile. Yes, you heard me right. There are songs that, instead of building your faith, strip it away. Songs that glorify weakness instead of victory, defeat instead of triumph, and pain instead of God's power. Words are not empty sounds, they carry power. Every time we open our mouths, we either build life or we release defeat. Worship is not just music, it is a declaration, a spiritual weapon, a confession of what we believe in the deepest part of our hearts. That is why the words we sing in church matter so much. A song is more than melody and rhythm. It is a message wrapped in music. And every message carries an atmosphere. It either fills the environment with light and faith or clouds it with heaviness and despair. When we sing songs of victory, heaven responds. When we sing songs of fear or defeat, the enemy finds fuel to keep us weak. Think for a moment about how worship shifts the atmosphere in a room. When people sing songs that magnify God's greatness, strength fills the hearts of the weary, joy rises in the broken, and courage stirs in those who feel like giving up. It is not because the song itself is magical, but because the words align with truth. Truth has power. Truth sets people free. On the other hand, when the words of a song emphasize struggle, failure, or hopelessness, it can drain the spirit of strength and create an atmosphere where heaviness thrives. The melody may sound beautiful, but if the message exalts weakness instead of God's victory, the enemy smiles because he knows those words are shaping people's faith in the wrong direction. Our hearts follow the words we repeatedly declare. If you constantly sing that you are broken, weak, and defeated, your mind begins to live in that reality. You may not even notice, but your spirit starts to shrink under the weight of your own confession. That is why the devil loves songs that glorify human weakness without pointing to God's power. They leave people stuck in their pain instead of lifting them into faith. But when you sing songs of triumph, songs that declare God is able, that victory is already won, that joy is your portion, you rise above your circumstances. You remind yourself and the enemy that you are not a victim, but a victor. There is a reason battles in the Bible were often accompanied by singing. Praise was used as a weapon, not just an expression. When armies sang, it confused their enemies and strengthened their courage. Even in prison, Paul and Silas lifted songs of praise, and the very foundations of the prison shook. That is the power of words in worship. Songs of victory don't just comfort the singer, they shake the atmosphere, they move heaven, and they silence the enemy. Every believer must be intentional with what they sing. Music touches the deepest part of the human soul. And repetition in song engraves words into our memory, more than any sermon ever could. If you are constantly feeding your soul with songs that remind you of despair, you are unknowingly programming yourself to live under it. But if you choose songs that magnify God's greatness, His promises, His faithfulness, then every time you sing, you are reinforcing victory into your spirit. It becomes harder for doubt to take root because faith is being watered with every lyric. The enemy knows he cannot stop you from singing, so he wants to influence what you sing. He wants believers to think that as long as they are in church and the music sounds holy, it doesn't matter what the lyrics say. But it matters greatly because words shape reality. If the lyrics feed defeat, defeat grows stronger. If the lyrics feed faith, faith grows unstoppable. This is why we must guard the atmosphere we create in worship. Worship is the sound of heaven, not the echo of despair. So let every song that leaves your lips be filled with life, truth, and victory. Refuse to let the enemy steal your voice by making you sing his favorite lyrics, words of weakness, hopelessness, and fear. Instead, lift up words that glorify God's strength, declare His promises, and celebrate His victory. Because when you sing faith, you build faith. When you sing hope, you live in hope. And when you sing victory, you walk in victory. The power of words in worship is real, so sing with intention, because every lyric shapes the atmosphere around you and the spirit within you. There is a subtle danger that often goes unnoticed in worship: the songs we choose to sing. Music has a way of bypassing logic and going straight into the heart. The melodies we repeat become the meditations of our spirit. This is why the enemy is not afraid of you singing. He is afraid of what you are singing. There are songs that glorify fear, weakness, and despair, and there are songs that glorify faith, power, and victory. One builds the believer, the other drains them. One lifts the atmosphere toward heaven, the other drags the atmosphere toward defeat. When we exalt our pain more than God's power, even if the tune is beautiful, it becomes a song that pleases the enemy. Think about how easy it is to get caught in songs that focus only on the valley. Lyrics filled with nothing but sorrow, emptiness, and despair may describe what you are going through, but they don't point you to who can bring you out of it. They may sound poetic, but they leave you circling around your problem instead of declaring the solution. The enemy loves these kinds of songs because they keep people trapped in their emotions, drowning in their struggles, and blind to the fact that God has already promised deliverance. Singing about fear without singing about the one who conquers fear is like pouring water into a broken cup. It never strengthens, it only leaks out. On the other hand, songs that glorify faith change everything. These are the songs that remind you of God's power even when you feel weak. They declare hope when everything around you feels hopeless. They shift your perspective from looking at the size of your mountain to looking at the greatness of your God. When you sing songs of faith, you are not denying your pain or your challenges. You are simply choosing not to exalt them. You are choosing to magnify the answer instead of the problem. That shift silences fear and builds strength inside of you. Fear-based songs often sound spiritual because they talk about brokenness, emptiness, and need. But if they never move to a place of declaring victory, they are incomplete. A song that begins with pain should always lead you to promise, because worship is meant to lift you higher, not chain you lower. If all your worship does is remind you how desperate you are without pointing to how powerful God is, then it has done nothing but glorify the very thing you should be delivered from. Faith songs, however, point you to the character of God, His goodness, His power, His faithfulness, and His ability to turn every situation around. Even in Scripture, we see how songs of faith changed battles. The people of Israel sang praises before their enemies were defeated, and the walls of Jericho fell after a shout of victory. These were not songs of despair. They were songs of faith. They were declarations that even though the enemy looked stronger, God was greater. That is the difference between songs that glorify fear and those that glorify faith. One makes the devil happy because it weakens your spirit. The other makes heaven rejoice because it unleashes divine power. Every time you open your mouth in worship, you have a choice. Will you sing songs that echo your pain and give glory to your fear? Or will you sing songs that declare faith and glorify your God? If you choose the first, you will always feel heavy because your words feed the darkness. If you choose the second, you will rise stronger because your words feed the light. The atmosphere you create in worship depends on what you are magnifying. If you magnify fear, fear grows. If you magnify faith, faith grows. So guard your worship. Do not let the enemy trick you into singing songs that chain you to despair Instead, fill your mouth with songs that lift your spirit and declare God's greatness. Choose to glorify faith over fear, victory over defeat, and hope over despair. Because the truth is this: the song you sing shapes the reality you live in. When you sing fear, you empower the enemy. When you sing faith, you invite heaven to move. And every time you choose faith, you remind both yourself and the powers of darkness that God is greater than anything you face. Worship is far more than music, far more than lyrics on a screen, far more than a routine in a service. Worship is warfare. It is a spiritual act that either weakens or strengthens the forces at work in your life. When you open your mouth and sing songs filled with truth and faith, you are not just creating a beautiful sound. You are unleashing a weapon that shakes the unseen realm. The enemy hates real worship because it reminds him of his defeat. He used to be a vessel of worship, and every time a believer sings truth, he is reminded that he no longer carries that privilege. That is why he tries so hard to influence the songs we sing, to shift them from weapons of victory into echoes of weakness. But when worship is directed with faith and truth, it confuses him and strengthens every believer who lifts their voice. There are countless examples throughout history and scripture that show the power of worship as a weapon. When the people of Israel marched around Jericho, they didn't break down the walls with swords or fire. They lifted a shout of praise, and the walls fell flat. When King Jehoshaphat faced armies far greater than his own, he did not put the strongest soldiers at the front of his army. He put singers. Worshippers went ahead declaring the greatness of God, and their enemies turned on each other in confusion. Paul and Silas, chained in a dark prison, didn't fight the guards or plan an escape. They sang songs of praise, and the prison shook until their chains fell off. These moments remind us that worship is not an accessory to faith. It is the very weapon that changes the outcome of battles. The reason worship works as warfare is because it shifts focus. When you worship in truth, you stop magnifying your problem and you magnify your God. The enemy wants you to be consumed with fear, but songs of faith declare, no matter what I face, my God is greater. That declaration creates an atmosphere the devil cannot stand to stay in. He thrives in environments of fear, doubt, and despair, but he flees from environments of faith, joy, and truth. Every lyric you sing in faith is like drawing a sword in the spirit. Every chorus of victory is like surrounding your life with a shield. Worship also strengthens the believer because it feeds the soul with truth. Your heart listens to your own voice. When you sing words of faith, you are building your own courage. You remind yourself that you are not alone, that you are not weak, that your God has already won. Even if your emotions feel heavy, even if your situation looks impossible, worship lifts you into a higher perspective. It aligns your heart with heaven's reality instead of earth's circumstances. It is impossible to sing truth over and over and not feel your faith grow stronger. That is why the enemy works so hard to distract or discourage worship, because he knows if you keep singing, you will keep winning. The beauty of worship as warfare is that it doesn't require talent. You don't need to have the best voice. You don't need to play an instrument. You don't even need a stage. All you need is a heart that believes what you are singing. When those words leave your lips in faith, heaven backs them, angels respond to them, and darkness trembles because of them. Worship is not about sound quality. It is about spiritual authority. A simple song of faith from a sincere heart has more power than the most elaborate music offered without belief. So never underestimate the moment you open your mouth in worship. You are stepping onto a battlefield, and your song is your weapon. When you sing truth, you stabilize. When you sing faith, you shatter fear. When you sing victory, you silence defeat. Worship is not for filling time in a service, it is for tearing down strongholds and lifting believers into strength. The next time you are under attack, don't just complain, don't just worry, don't just sit in silence. Sing. Because when you worship, the enemy gets confused, your spirit grows stronger, and heaven moves on your behalf. Complaining has always been the enemy of faith. And when it seeps into the lyrics of our songs, it does more damage than we realize. Music is powerful because it not only reflects what we feel, but also reinforces it. When we sing words over and over again, they sink into the heart and shape the way we think and believe. That is why songs filled with complaining, hopelessness, and doubt are so dangerous. They may sound emotional and relatable, but instead of pulling people into the light of God's truth, they trap them deeper in their feelings. The devil delights in these kinds of songs because they keep believers focused on their pain rather than on God's power. He knows that if he can get the church to sing defeat, they will live in defeat. When you study the patterns of complaining, you see it always produces the same result: darkness. In the wilderness, the people of Israel had seen miracles with their own eyes, seas parting, bread falling from heaven, water gushing from rocks. Yet their mouths were filled with murmuring. They complained about their conditions, their leaders, and their future. That constant complaining fueled fear, drained faith, and kept an entire generation from entering the promised land. What they declared with their mouths shaped what they experienced in their lives. The same principle applies in worship today. When lyrics glorify despair more than they declare hope, they create an atmosphere where faith cannot flourish. The enemy loves to hear believers singing words that sound like complaints wrapped in melody. Lines that focus only on being broken, lonely, abandoned, or overwhelmed may express real feelings. But if they never point to the greatness of God, they glorify the struggle instead of the solution. It is one thing to be honest about pain, but it is another to exalt it above the truth. Worship should always take us from honesty to hope, from weakness to strength, from the valley to the vision of victory. If a song stops at despair, then it leaves the singer bound instead of free, and that is exactly what the devil wants. The truth is that complaining songs feed the flesh, but starve the spirit. They keep emotions at the center and push faith to the side. That is why people can sing them and feel moved for a moment, yet leave with no lasting strength. The atmosphere feels heavy instead of lifted. That heaviness is not from God. It is the weight of words that agree more with darkness than with light. The enemy claps at those lyrics because he knows they are reinforcing hopelessness instead of breaking chains. Contrast this with songs that may start with pain but lead to promise. The Psalms are full of moments where the writer cries out in distress, but notice how almost every one ends with a declaration of trust in God. That is the difference between complaint and worship. One glorifies the problem. The other glorifies the provider. A true worship song doesn't leave you stuck in despair. It lifts you out of it by declaring that God is greater than what you feel. Believers must be discerning in what they choose to sing. Not every song that sounds spiritual carries the spirit of truth. Ask yourself, does this song magnify God's power? Or does it magnify my pain? Does it lead me into faith? Or does it keep me circling in frustration? If the answer is the latter, then no matter how emotional or popular the song is, it is not fueling your spirit. It is fueling the enemy's agenda. Words matter. Lyrics matter. What you sing matters. Every time you step into worship, you are setting an atmosphere. That atmosphere will either invite light or invite darkness. If your songs are filled with complaining, you will feel more burdened, not less. But if your songs are filled with faith, you will feel lighter, stronger, and freer. That is the beauty of choosing songs that glorify hope over hopelessness, truth over doubt, and victory over defeat. The devil may delight in complaining songs, but he trembles when believers lift their voices in faith. So guard your worship. Don't let your mouth become an instrument of complaint disguised as music. Refuse to give the enemy the satisfaction of hearing despair repeated in your song. Instead, fill your lyrics with declarations of light, faith, and victory. Because when your words exalt God's power, you shift the atmosphere, you silence the enemy, and you remind both yourself and the world that hopelessness is never the final note. Hope always has the last song. Every sound released in worship is not neutral. The notes we sing and the lyrics we declare carry weight in the spiritual realm. Worship is not just melody and rhythm, it is a spiritual transaction. Every word, every phrase, every chorus carries power to either invite the presence of heaven or to empower the forces of darkness. Heaven responds to praise, and hell responds to negativity. That is why it matters deeply what songs we choose to lift, what words we put on our lips, and what atmosphere we create when we worship. Praise has always attracted the presence of God. When people sing songs that exalt His greatness, declare His promises, and magnify His power, heaven draws near. Chains break, hearts are lifted, and lives are transformed. Praise is not just about how good God is, it is about aligning ourselves with His truth. Every note of praise declares, God is still on the throne, He is still faithful, He is still greater than anything I face. Heaven hears those words, angels move into action, and the atmosphere becomes charged with light and life. That is why worship can shift the entire mood of a service, a family, or even an individual moment. It literally pulls heaven's reality into earth's environment. Negativity, on the other hand, has the opposite effect. When our songs are filled with despair, defeat, and hopelessness, they create an atmosphere that the enemy thrives in. Hell feeds on negativity because it is the language of fear, doubt, and unbelief. Words that glorify weakness without pointing to God's strength are not neutral. They are destructive. When believers sing lyrics that circle around failure without declaring faith, they open the door for discouragement, heaviness, and confusion to grow stronger. The enemy knows the power of words, and if he can get God's people to sing negativity in the name of worship, he can weaken their spirit without them even realizing it. It is important to understand that every song is shaping something. It is either building faith or draining it. It is either lifting the heart into God's presence or sinking it into despair. This is why in moments of battle or pressure, songs of praise are so critical. They are not just comfort, they are weapons. A believer who chooses to sing praise in the middle of trial is declaring war against the forces of hell. Praise confuses the enemy because it shows that no matter how hard he tries, he cannot steal your faith or silence your song. The Bible is full of examples where praise became the weapon of victory. When Jehoshaphat's army faced overwhelming enemies, singers were placed at the front. They praised before the battle was won, and God caused confusion in the enemy's camp. Paul and Silas sang hymns in prison, and the walls shook until their chains fell off. These were not passive moments of music, they were acts of warfare. Heaven responded to their praise, and breakthrough came. Now consider what happens when negativity takes center stage. Just as praise invites heaven, negativity invites heaviness. Just as faith-filled songs bring freedom, hopeless songs bring bondage. Hell responds to negativity by amplifying the fear and despair that the lyrics glorify. That is why some people can leave a time of worship still feeling heavy, It is not because the music wasn't moving, but because the words they repeated did not release faith. Every believer must choose carefully. Do your songs stir courage or drain it? Do your lyrics declare God's promises or rehearse your pain? Do your notes sound like weapons against the enemy, or do they echo the very lies he wants you to believe? Worship is never neutral. It always builds something, and it always attracts something. So guard your worship. Refuse to let your mouth be a tool of negativity. Choose songs that exalt God's name, declare his truth, and celebrate his victory. Because when you sing praise, heaven responds. Chains break, light fills the room, and angels move on your behalf. But when you sing negativity, hell responds, darkness lingers, and faith weakens. The choice is yours, and it is made every time you open your mouth to worship. Praise lifts, negativity weighs down. Praise invites heaven, negativity empowers hell. And in every battle, the song you sing can determine whether you stand in victory or sink in defeat. Songs are more than melodies and rhymes. They are declarations of belief, confessions of the heart, and seeds planted into the soul. What you sing consistently, you eventually start to believe, and what you believe shapes how you live. That is why choosing victory songs is not just a matter of taste or preference. It is a matter of spiritual alignment. Every lyric you declare is either aligning your spirit with heaven's truth or with hell's lies. To live in strength, you must sing in strength. To walk in faith, you must sing faith. Victory songs are intentional choices to declare triumph, joy, and confidence in the promises of God, even when circumstances whisper otherwise. It is easy to sing songs of defeat because they resonate with raw feelings. Life brings seasons of pain, disappointment, and discouragement, and in those moments, songs that echo despair feel relatable. But relatability is not the same as truth. Songs that dwell on failure and fear may describe your reality, but they do not define your destiny. If you give them your voice, you are reinforcing the very lies that want to keep you bound. The enemy delights in those melodies because they keep your heart chained to what is instead of lifting you to what could be. Choosing victory songs is a refusal to give your voice to defeat. It is declaring, I will not exalt my problem above my God. I will not sing hell's lies when heaven's truth is available. Victory songs carry power because they shift the focus from feelings to faith. They remind you that you are more than a conqueror, that joy comes in the morning, that hope never fails, and that greater is the one within you than anything against you. Singing those words repeatedly engraves them into your spirit until they become second nature. Even when fear tries to creep in, the anthem of victory rises louder. I will not fear, for I am never alone. My God has already gone before me. These declarations are not wishful thinking. They are anchors for the soul that keep you steady in storms. The power of victory songs is seen throughout history. Soldiers on battlefields sang before marching into conflict, not because the war was over, but because their spirit needed courage. Believers in prison lifted songs, not because they were free, but because they knew freedom was coming. In the darkest valleys, people of faith have sung of light, and their songs became the bridge between despair and breakthrough. When you choose victory songs, you are not ignoring reality. You are speaking a higher reality. You are declaring what heaven says until it becomes visible on earth. It is not only personal strength that comes from victory songs. They also influence the atmosphere around you. In gatherings, a song of triumph lifts the faith of an entire room. In homes, a song of joy drives out heaviness. Even alone, when discouragement tries to suffocate you, a song of faith can shift the atmosphere in your heart. Songs are contagious, and what you sing can either spread hope or spread despair. This is why victory songs are so essential. They don't just shape you, they shape everyone who hears you. Choosing victory songs is an act of discipline as much as devotion. You may not always feel like singing them. Your emotions may resist. Your circumstances may mock, and your fears may argue. But every time you choose them anyway, you are reminding your soul of its authority and your spirit of its source. You are aligning with heaven's reality, declaring that joy is greater than sorrow, peace stronger than fear, and faith louder than doubt. Over time, what you sing becomes what you see. So be intentional. Guard the lyrics you allow into your spirit. Refuse to give your voice to despair. Instead, choose songs that declare triumph, joy, and faith. Fill your mouth with victory until your heart believes it and your life reflects it. Because every song is a seed, and every seed grows into something. If you plant songs of defeat, you reap discouragement. But if you plant songs of victory, you reap strength, courage, and unshakable faith. The choice is yours, and it begins with the song you sing. Heaven's reality is always greater than hell's lies. So sing it, believe it, and live it. When all is said and done, worship is not entertainment, it is warfare. Every lyric, every note, every chorus is either building your faith or draining it, either inviting the presence of heaven or giving ground to the enemy. That is why songs matter, words matter, atmosphere matters. The songs you sing are not just sounds. They are declarations that shape the unseen world around you. We have seen that words in worship carry power, that songs of fear only fuel the enemy, but songs of faith break chains. We have learned that worship itself is a weapon, that complaining songs delight the devil, while songs of praise confuse and weaken him. Heaven always responds to praise, while hell feeds on negativity. And so, the call is simple yet urgent. Choose victory songs. Choose to sing what aligns with heaven's truth, not hell's lies. Every time you lift your voice in worship, you are taking a stand. You are either declaring defeat or proclaiming triumph. You are either strengthening darkness or summoning light. The decision rests in the songs you choose to sing. That is why you cannot afford to be careless, passive, or casual about worship. What you sing shapes what you believe, and what you believe shapes how you live. So let your worship be intentional. Fill your mouth with songs that exalt hope, faith, and victory. Refuse to give your voice to despair. Refuse to let the enemy rejoice over your words. Instead, let your worship summon heaven, strengthen your spirit, and silence the enemy. Because when you choose victory songs, you do more than sing. You step into alignment with heaven. You shift atmospheres. And you walk in the power that was always meant to be yours. Remember this: the devil may tremble at your prayers, but he flees at your praise. Don't give him what makes him happy. Give heaven what makes it move. Sing victory, live victory, and let your life become the song that reminds darkness it has already been defeated.